The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments in areas as varied as aviation, politics, sports, education, business, and literature. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Hazel N. Dukes, the president of the New York State NAACP. Welcome to African American Legends again, Hazel.
Thank you so much.
Now, the NAACP in New York State is really one of the most active branches in the whole country. As a matter of fact, the New York State is composed of all of the branches. How many branches of NAACP do you have in New York?
54.
That's fantastic.
Right.
It really is. And you're the leader.
Yes,
now,
I am.
Tell me, what are your priorities right now in 2011?
Education, health, housing, economic development, and looking at the criminal justice system. Yeah.
Those are key areas.
The 5 key areas.
They've actually been areas that the African American community has been concerned about all along.
But we're putting greater emphasis on education.
That's
because of the myriad of things that happen. You know, here in New York State, we competed for Race to the Top. Mm-hmm. We looked at it at first. We did not sign on for it. And then we met with Commissioner Steiner and Regent Tisch. We had a coalition made up of Class Size Matter and the Hispanic Federation. We have been a team for the last, I would say, almost 10 years now. As you know, we was part of the suit on smaller class sizes. And so we won that suit, although we've not seen the accomplishment of that because of the budgets and because where we are in the state, not just New York City. You know, when I look at the big 5, that takes in Yonkers, Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. So I have to look at it from a state vision. While we have 15 branches located within the 5 boroughs of New York City, our branches have been very active in the school closing, looking at charter schools, doing a lot of research. And we were blessed. We've been funded by Verizon, Hess Corporation. Every year they give us money for education. So we've been very focused on that. We have a program called Lift It, where we have parents, teachers, and administrators coming together. And we added the component of health for it because when First Lady Michelle Obama came to speak to us last year, we thought her program, Let's Move, was very interesting. Mm-hmm. So while the school are not moving our children, we put Let's Move a part of our education program with our schools that we're doing.
One thing that President Obama has done is to emphasize the role of education in the economic recovery of the country. And in a sense, education becomes a new civil right.
It is.
Because many poor and African American children, Latino children, do not have a quality education in that sometimes they don't get the qualified teachers, they don't have the resources. And in fact, in New York State, we have the campaign for fiscal equity.
That's never been fully implemented.
We won the battle in the courts to say that it should be equalized funding, but they never have actually implemented. And now, in the budget crisis, they actually talk about cutting back
what they had. Well, one of the first things that the former governor did, Spitzer, he did put in the budget for the request to equalize the rural schools and the urban schools with the suburban schools. And of course, the budget crisis happened and the money did not get to them. That's the argument we are having now with closing of schools, especially here in New York City. What did you do to assist those schools where they needed? Did you get qualified teachers there? Did you get the resources that they needed for special ed children, for the children who have a language barrier. And so that's our fight. It's not for the teachers, not for UFT that some of the people try to say we're doing. No, we're talking about qualification of teachers in the public schools. Now, I guess you've heard me say this a zillion times. I'm not against a parent. A parent have a right to send their children to the school that they think will educate their children for safety or for many reasons. But still, the majority of our children go to public schools. And so we can never turn our back on public education. And so that's what we got to say to the state. That's what we got to say to this nation, that public education is the way to go. And if a teacher is not qualified, that teacher should be out of the system. Should be out of the system, there's no doubt about it. But you just can't say that seasoned teachers are all bad teachers and all new teachers. So we got to have a way to evaluate teachers on performance.
Yeah, one of the things that has really come about recently because of the budget crisis, what they call last in, first out, where in the budget crisis, the most recently hired teachers will be fired because they don't have the money. And some people are saying, well, let's keep them and get rid of some of the older teachers who are not efficient. That really is a charade.
Absolutely.
In the sense that if, as you say, teachers of any background or any age are not doing their job, they should be evaluated and relieved of their duties.
Absolutely.
But the fact is, to say that you're just going to randomly get rid of certain teachers because the principal doesn't like them or because they're in the wrong place is wrong. So the NAACP, I know, has been an advocate for keeping schools open, even though they may have problems, but getting more resources into those schools so they can do a better job.
And we're also concerned about the overcrowdedness of a classroom. You know, Dr. Brown is an educator, a par excellence in my book as an educator, that even in the gifted classes, when you get over 28 children in a class, you can't do it. I lived in Roslyn. I know in the suburban area, I know that 28 was the max. When you said 28, the parents went up in smoke that you got 28 children in class. So when you add that on to the other kind of problems, the resources and the qualified teachers, and you have 35 and 40 children in a classroom, that's unacceptable. I think for me, we are going back to segregation in this city and in this nation, because what we have now is a competing of resources with charter schools. The public schools still, because they rely on budget, not like the suburban school where the tax dollars help fund your school and your other activities. You don't have it for our children. And so we are having a two-tier, a two-class system in education. We can't afford that and be competitive as a nation. Our children must be competitive. It is no longer the jobs that we used to have, the manufacturing jobs, all those have disappeared. And so to have productive citizens, we must find a way to have curriculum and the resources to meet the need, so when children finish high school, they're prepared to go to college. If they're not, what else do we have to offer them? What do we do? We need dental assistants. We need nurses. We need carpenters. We need electricians. Robots are not going to do all of that. So we still need to prepare our young people for their future.
There's no question about it. And unfortunately, in this present climate where the economy is down, they're making the teachers and the public workers the victims and the cause of the problem rather than the real cause, which was the debacle in Wall Street and the financial markets. And a number of people don't understand this. They say, well, the teachers are privileged, that they're not doing their job, that we don't need as many of them. As you say, that is absolutely ridiculous. But let's look at it from a political point of view. What can and should organizations like the NAACP be doing to help turn this around?
Well, I think that in Wisconsin, the NAACP has been very active there. You know, that's the focus now. From Wisconsin, it's supposed to move on to Ohio and other places. I think here in New York State, I believe that the governor is sensitive to the issue. I believe that the governor wants to put in measurements that we really evaluate people to see if they're performing or not. I think the governor understands that civil servants is the backbone of this state and indeed this country. It was the men and women who did not have a PhD, but build the railroads and drive the buses that produce for their children a better way of life by being able to educate them in our public colleges, in our private colleges. They wanted better for their children than they had. So civil servants have been the backbone of America. They have worked hard. They have done the menial jobs, drive a bus all day, clean the bathrooms, work on the railroad, and they did this to be better, to make a better way for their children. They didn't have the education that it wasn't even required. You came out of high school. I remember the late Lucille Rose, who started an employment center in Brooklyn before she became the deputy mayor of the city of New York. And her training was to get young men and women who had finished high school, but because of finance, because of different circumstances, they could not go to higher education, but she prepared them to be productive citizens and to be able to rear families and buy homes because of the civil service training them to pass civil service exams.
Well, one of the things that I think the governor is trying to do is to get a compromise whereby the unions will make some givebacks on things like the pension so that the cost to the community would not be as high. One of the push-pulls in this is the tax structure.
Right.
Apparently, the
wealthy.
The richest people don't pay what many people think is their share of the taxes, and so they push back on the unions and people who they think are getting benefits that they shouldn't get.
I think it's unfair.
But there is a negotiation, and I think the governor recognizes that need to maintain the structure of collective bargaining, maintain the teachers and the firemen and the policemen and so on, but at the same time that the union's probably going to have to give some givebacks on some of those pension.
Well, I think the issue is they want to be able to sit at a table and negotiate. They don't want the legislature to make a law that this is going to be it in no other way. I think the negotiation will take place. I think they are looking at the future, not the men and women who are already retired and are getting ready to retire. So I think the negotiation, when it takes place, I think the unions will be sensible. The unions saved this city, as you recall. Remember under Hugh Carey? It wasn't the billionaires. It was the civil servants. It was the men and women that came in. It was the Victor Gottbaum and those people who went to the table and saved this city. It was the unions that saved the NAACP when we came into Mississippi, when they tied up the funds of NAACP. It was the union. So the civil servant, the middle class, have always bared the blunt to make America tick, as they said. So I don't know, no one has ever given me a statistic of how many billionaires that we have. Forbes put in and list them. So if you look at where they are, plus the middle class should not be the ones that have to bear the total burden of the financial mishap that we had in this country.
Well, I saw one statistic. There are 100,000 more millionaires in New Jersey than there are teachers.
Oh, really?
They had 200 and some thousand millionaires and 100 and some thousand teachers. So the question is really just, the emphasis is displaced. But the question I wanted us to think about, how do you think we got here? Why did a society that was built on working families and unions is now being disparaged by the press in particular and the so-called wealthy? How did we get to this point?
Well, they're saying, and it's crazy to me, how do you talk about a bonus versus a pension?
Right.
A bonus comes every year, and your bonus increase and increase. Your pension do not. Whatever you retired, salary that you retire, that's how they base your salary.
Yeah.
But you don't base a bonus that way. This year you could get $100 million in a bonus, and then next year you could get even more on a bonus,
sometimes.
or less,
Yeah.
but that don't happen in a pension.
Yeah.
So the people in the private sector is saying that because people get pensions, lifelong pensions, that it's unfair for what they get. So they was greedy. Wall Street was greedy. Sure, maybe they shouldn't have got $100,000 at one time for a bonus. Maybe they should be on the same kind of system that the pension people are. But they're looking at it that it's a lifelong, as long as you live, if you retire, you get that pension. Okay? It's like Social Security. They want to go after Social Security. There are people who are receiving Social Security is not even a living wage because what they worked for and what they are getting, they can't even survive on it. That's why we have an increase in the homeless and an increase in the hunger in this country because some people are only getting a Social Security check. So when the private sector put all of these stone walls or throw bricks at people who are getting pension and Social Security, it's totally unfair. And so that's why the NAACP have to use these measures and say these are civil rights issues. Education is a civil rights issue. To deny people access to health care, that's a civil rights in a country, in a civilized country. So we have to take the banner of these issues up. We have to look at the criminal justice system to see how how sentencing is distributed to people. We don't want anybody selling drugs in our community. We don't want anyone robbery, but is there different in a white collar than just the Joe that's on the street? So these are civil rights issues that was not in the 1909. This is the second century of the NAACP. We've never left education from not being a priority.
Well, recently the NAACP held its Image Awards to recognize outstanding African Americans in the arts and theater and music and in public service. And you were there, and they honored the Surgeon General, Regina Benjamin. They honored Colin Powell, former Secretary of State. How did you feel when you saw Regina being honored and Colin Powell being honored?
For the Surgeon General, it was just great. First of all, because she's a young woman. Her story has not been told, the sacrifice that she has made to do this. She, you know, she's the nation physician. And as she said, her first issue is preventing. You know, she wanted to teach us about how we prevent getting into the serious issues we have, especially in our community, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, right, that we can do something about it. We can do something about it before it happened. We can watch our diet. We can exercise, which a lot of us don't do. We become potato couches. And so for her to be a young woman, our chairman, who's a young woman, Rosalind Brock, who's 42 years old, met her because she's in the healthcare. She worked for Kellogg Foundation and was a program officer and met the Surgeon General during her time there. And so they have known each other through the years, and she looked at March being Women History Month, looking at trying to instill education into our children, and she thought this was a good choice, and it was. It went over well. Colin Powell, no doubt about it, is in a class by himself. first of all, his accomplishment out of South Bronx for where he was. And as he said, when he went into the Army, it wasn't about whether he was black or white. It was whether he could perform. And so that still is what we have to instill into our children today. Unfortunate, though, they continue to see the pushback of people not recognizing the gifts that we have in our community. When you look and see that for a school chancellor in New York City, we got a business person, which is fine, but to me, an educator would have been the like of what we wanted our children to see, why education is so important. Not that diminishing her career. It's been fantastic. But when you look at what we had in a Rudy Crew, and a Richard Green, that was showing our young men that there is a place for men in education. It's not just for women. And so I think we are lacking in what we are saying and showing our children. You know, there's a saying is that people rather see a sermon than they hear a sermon. And so I'm saying in education and in these issues, I would rather see that our children see that we do have men and women who have sacrificed so much to gain prominence in these areas, that they should also be lifted up.
Well, you're the president of the New York State NAACP. Why don't we have a New York State Image Award? What about that? And who would you honor in New York State if you had a New York State Image Award?
Well, for education, there's no doubt about it, you would be my first choice.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm going to have my 75th anniversary here in New York. The state conference will be 75 years old, and we are planning that now. And education is going to be a big part of what we do.
Now, the NWCP also has honored people in the arts and film, and one of the reasons why it was so significant this year in the Academy Award, the Oscars, there was not a single African-American
There was
nominee.
the blackout. The Oscars had a blackout
And so
this year.
then the NWC Image Award helped to fill that void.
Tyler Moore.
What should we do to make sure that the larger community continues to represent the African-American experience?
This was the 42nd year of the Image Awards. And I think the Image Award will continue so they can highlight. Denzel Washington has been highlighted on the NAACP. Before he got an Oscar, he got the Image Award for NAACP. And Aretha Franklin got the NAACP Image Award. Oprah Winfield have received the Spin Gone, which is the highest medal we give to African Americans, as well as with the Image Award. Jackie Robinson, you know. So the list go on. What we have tried to portray into our community, the positive roles that African Americans have made to this country.
What do you say to some of the younger, more affluent African Americans, maybe poor ones as well, who say the NAACP isn't doing anything? We don't need it anymore. What would you say to them?
Well, we have just a few that would say that. The ones who know their history and been a part of the struggle, they know that we are needed more now than probably we was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because they see the regression that is taking place in America today. They see the people who are elected to higher office today, where their mentality is, and what they perceive is when they use the term taking our country back. Who are they taking it back from?
Right.
What are they taking it from? Who and where? And so they are listening very carefully to what is being said now, and know that we are still here and we still will be on the front line.
And the NAACP is getting more younger African-American men and women to participate.
Absolutely.
As reflected in your leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that the beat goes on, and I think people like Hazel Dukes help to keep the drum major in place.
Oh, absolutely.
That's your job.
That's my job, to see that our branches, Mid-Manhattan branch, you know, they got a younger a group of young people coming in. You look at Syracuse, you look at Rochester, you look at Rockland County, more young people. They are getting more young African-American professionals who have the money and the time to give back, so we are not depending on other people to do for us what we can do for ourselves.
Now, if anybody is watching and has been inspired to want to join or volunteer for NAACP, how do they get in touch with you?
They can call our office, 212-344-7474. They can go on the internet. We have NYSNAACP.org. They can go on and they get the list of the branches throughout the state, the president's name, their phone number, their email address, and our email is nysnaacp@aol.com. And it shows the list of all the activities that we're doing. On the 15th of March, we will have our Albany mobilization. We'll be going by buses to Albany to meet with our legislators, to meet with the governor, to meet with the senators, and to meet with the speaker to talk about these issues.
And under the leadership of Hazel N. Dukes, the New York State NAACP will always be active. Thanks again to Hazel Dukes for being with us on African American Legends. Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.